CFF presents 1% Better, a podcast about
CrossFit, nutrition, coaching, mindset, and community.
Join us as we embark in casual conversation to shed light on what life is like within these black and yellow walls. With episodes coming at you every Monday, you can follow along with Coach Whitney and Taryn as we talk shop about all things CFF. Episode 4. I was stuck in the 40s.
No.
I'm not even going to start again. We're
can't.
rolling with that. Episode 51. 51, we're breaking
Stuck
50.
in the 40s. It's like people with bad hair who are stuck in the 80s, but here we are.
All right, today we're talking about excuses, and that has been the common theme in this
Literally in my day yesterday.
Was the line, there will always be excuses.
Which, okay, so shout out to the people who said that to me for acknowledging the fact that there will always be excuses.
Yeah.
Because I think that's like a big thing. Like, you can make excuses, and some people are oblivious to the fact that that is their default reaction. But when you can acknowledge that you are making excuses and that that may be a chronic thing for you, good on you. That's like step one, I think.
Highly overlooked.
Yes.
By the majority of the population, I would say. And I'm guilty of it.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm pretty good at it, actually. Yeah.
I'm making excuses or being aware of those excuses?
I'd probably say I excel more at making excuses, but I am aware of them. The hard part is doing something about it.
So I actually came about a quote yesterday was, every time that we say, I wish, like I wish for this, or I wish that this would happen.
Just making an excuse.
It is an excuse, but it's you already acknowledging that you're not going to make a change. Every time you say, I wish, it's you saying, I'm not going to change. I thought that was interesting.
Okay, so then what is the alternative? Like, how do you change that narrative to set you up for success?
Like, these are the things that are happening. Like, you have to be aware that these are, this is something we spoke right before we started this podcast. Like, being aware that these barriers are now in front of you and like, cool, I'm going to find my way through it, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of avoiding it. You create excuses to avoid those things. Right. They're hard. Right. They cause resistance. They cause friction. And us as human beings want to take the path of least resistance. So we go the easiest way, right? Which is generally not in line with our goals or what it is that we're trying to accomplish with said given task.
Well, because it has that comfort feeling.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
We talk about this all the time, like nutrition. Why don't people want to spend time on their nutrition? Because it's uncomfortable to make change, right? They're happier with the habits that they've got. But like you just said, it doesn't help you achieve the goals that you want to achieve.
Then, I mean, that can apply to anything, really.
Yes.
Like in your entire life, not just in the gym or your food or whatever, like your day to day, getting up an hour earlier. You can list off a laundry list of reasons or excuses why that's not for you, but it's more just you acknowledging that you're not going to make that change, you know?
If you are at the point where you realize you want to make a change, but your excuses are getting in your way, where do you typically guide people to like stop doing that?
Seek help first. Like, if you can't ask for help, that's a big problem.
Okay, so that's an interesting thing, because one of the conversations I had with a client was, if I didn't have you as a coach, I would have stopped, or I wouldn't even be here, or I wouldn't be doing this. And I was like, yeah, like that's my job. You are now accountable to me and to my time. Like, you don't show up, that is a waste of my time. It's not just on you as to whether you're going to get it done, but now there's this other person involved and you have to be accountable to me too, right? So that kind of takes away that excuse of, I'm not going to work out today, or I don't feel like working this hard, or maybe I'll do 2 rounds instead of 4, that kind of thing.
That must have been a deep conversation for you to tell them that it would be a waste of my time.
Yeah.
Like, I like that. That's honest.
Honestly, like if you're coming to do PT, like my day is set up to include you in it. Like, that is sacred time. That's good. It's few and far between that time is available for people.
I feel like that's the most obvious one, is to seek out help.
Yeah.
But I find that it's sometimes the hardest one is people admitting that they need help. And yet it's the missing puzzle piece that like ultimately will lead the most success. If you can find that right person and that whatever it is that you need them for to give you those things, like that seems like a no-brainer to me. But
yeah, and it's cool, and it appears in different ways. It can appear in like a coaching way, like my client, for instance, like needing that accountability during the workouts, but it can also, and I see it show up in our classes where our members holding each other accountable to come to class so that they're not rolling over and hitting the snooze button because now they know this person is expecting them. Like the excuses can't be there, because then you gotta face the person when you decide to hit snooze and don't show up. Yeah. And that part's hard too. So which is like, choose your hard, right? Which is going to be harder, having to go and say, yeah, I didn't make it, and let that person down essentially, or not hitting snooze and getting out of bed.
So when we talk about having that accountability layer, this was an interesting conversation that I had actually this morning, was recruiting your family or your friends to be that accountable layer is not, I would almost say more times than not, a path that is less successful.
I was just going to say, that's a hard
than having a stranger or somebody that you're not emotionally attached to, or, you know, have that type of relationship with. That person is going to have a higher success rate to holding you accountable, because you've got no emotion and nothing in between to sort of like gray that line, right? Which I thought was a important sort of detail. Like, yeah, we can reach out to our spouse or family or friends or whatever, but like, is that being successful for you? And if not, like, you have to understand that it's probably because there is that other layer of it. And some people just naturally cannot, or, you know, that's a tough barrier to work with, I find.
Well, I think it comes back, and we've talked about this before too, like surrounding yourself with like-minded people. Your spouse might not have an understanding or an interest, or I don't want to say don't care, but like,
no, it could
they're
be
not
just
as
generally
invested
don't
in
care.
your goal or the process in which you're taking to get there, versus the people that you might hang around with at the gym or your coaches. Like, those people are invested in you or in similar goals, and the path in which you're taking is very similar. So it's easier to ask for help from people like that.
Yeah, like you don't know.
Yeah.
Or don't have that connection with.
Yeah.
Or that emotional layer with.
Yeah.
I agree.
For sure. What other conversations have you had about excuses in the past a little bit?
I'm probably the last person you bring that shit to.
Probably.
This funny, like, this is my line. Like, I'm working on empathy, but I do not, and I will not have sympathy. You know,
heard that line a few times.
There is always a way. But again, if your automatic knee-jerk reaction is, this is too hard, this is why I can't do this, like, you're not as committed to the things that you say you are as much as you are, you know? So that has kind of been where I've been. People, like, if you're going to tell me that you can't do something, you better have a really good, legitimate reason why. Because if you give me your reason, I'm pretty sure I'm going to debunk that myth, and then I'm going to debunk the next one you're going to give me after that. And after you get through your list, then you'll finally understand what I'm trying to tell you. And that's okay. I can go on all day. Like,
I remember the first time you did that to me.
I did?
Yeah.
What? How? Tell our listeners remind me of that.
We were walking the dogs, and I was trying to decide if I wanted to do the open for the first time.
Oh, yeah. How did this conversation go?
And you were like, this is exactly how you just stated it. You're like, okay, tell me your reasons why you don't want to do it. So I said one, and you turned around real quick and you're like, that's a dumb reason. We can scale this. We can do this. We can do that. And I was like, I think it because I said I was new. Like, I'm new. I won't be good at it. Nope, not good enough. And I think I gave you like 3. And then I was like, oh, fine. I will sign up. And man, I hate when you're right, because it was a good experience, and here we are today. But that was probably the most annoying part.
Can we quote that one? I hate when you're right.
Yeah, no.
But that's usually how those conversations go, you know? You walk in here, you're all rattled up that this is not working out, or this just all of a sudden got way too, way more tough than you had anticipated or planned for. And, I can't do this because XYZ. Hang on. Like, you're emotionally charged about why this is difficult. I'm not. Like, I'm on the outside. I have an objective perspective about it. I'm going to tell you all the reasons why those are dumb reasons.
Yeah.
Here's what matters. And I'll kind of steer you back the way that I know you should be going. So
it was interesting. Last week, we had a member who was going on about, I'm not going to be able to make it next week because I'm working so much. Like, I don't have time. Like, I'm working 14 plus hours and then I'm away on holidays. Like, I'm not going to be at the gym. And I said to her, I said, so what's wrong with 6 a.m.? And she looked at me and she's like, oh, like, that's an option? Like, yeah, come to 6 a.m. Like, try it. See what it feels like. Well, she rolled in for her first 6 a.m. And at the end, she's like, this is great. I love it at this time. Like, it's nice to get it out of the way. It is a great way to start my day. It's not as hot. All of these things. And it's like, yeah, but if you had have just like succumbed to your excuses, you wouldn't have got to experience this. You wouldn't have got to experience these people and what it's like at this time.
And sort of the key detail in that conversation is exactly what we were just talking about. Yeah. She voiced it and we helped steer her the right direction. So there's that accountability layer of someone else on the outside helping you stay where you need to be.
Yeah.
There's always that, but if you don't voice it, or if you just only have that conversation with yourself, right? Yeah. You're not going to be the one, surely, that, I mean, 9 out of 10 people are surely not going to be able to steer that the right way.
What do you think it takes for people to like step across and to try?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this, because I was like preparing this segue in my mind while you were talking.
Because I'm just thinking of this particular situation with this person, because like, super in routine, now out of routine. I have now given her a solution, which is not her norm. Like, what is it that made her try? And end up being super successful.
What is it so those are 2 different questions. What is it that made her try? I think is her trust in us.
Okay.
Right?
Yes, for sure.
She trusts us to give her the best sort of route forward that, like, hey, we gave you this suggestion.
Okay.
You don't really have that list of reasons. And even if she did, we would still debunk them, so I think it's an element of trust.
Okay. Yeah.
So that would be the first part of it. I think the second part of it is like, what helps them be successful is practice.
Yes.
Because, so this is almost like a twofold thing, is like, we have these reasons. So then we beat them down and we make a new plan, right? So there's one piece of success, but that doesn't mean that automatically when you step down this new route, that things are just going to change overnight and this is going to become less hard, like that, right? So there's another layer where all of a sudden you've got to build this new habit, and you have to allow the time for that to be successful. And that takes time, and I think that's the part where people get lost on the second run. And to be able to stick through that initial transition period and have the discipline at that part deems whether you'll ultimately be successful or not, right? Like, there's step 1, step into the shallow part of the water. Now you're in the deep end. What are you going to do? Right. And they say that, like, when you're starting to build a new routine or new habits or things like that, the first week is the most important week, because that's the habit building week. So if you can be disciplined through that first week, hey, guess what? The second week gets a little bit easier. The third week, it's almost permanent. And the fourth week, after being consistent for 4 weeks, like, you've got it down. But we're such an instant gratification drive society that if we don't see that success, or it doesn't get easier on our very first or at most second try, we abandon it, right? So I think there needs to be that accountability layer built in almost more heavily to that second layer to be successful in that part. It's like, hey, I've got the solution for you. Here it is. But wait, we need many goals, that little bit of hand holding through the initial phase of it until you build the confidence that you can handle this on your own, right? Like, and again, here I'm kind of on my soapbox right now, but that's the next part, is the confidence piece of it. It's like, we want to set out and try these new things, but you're unsure of your own capabilities with it, right? Because it's new, or it's tough or whatever, right? And you just need to go through it a couple of times over and over again for you to be like, no, you know what? I can handle this. It is better this way, or whatever it might be that you're doing at that time. So it's like one step leads into the next, and each step has a failure point, and it's on you for how much discomfort you're willing to feel, because obviously you get a little deeper into it, things get a lot more challenging. But the things that you've already accomplished along the way, like those things are easy now. It's just you're getting better at what you're doing, so it challenges you in different ways. Habits are tough, man.
As you're explaining this, it's like, this is why things like bright spots are super important, to like check in on those small little wins as you go to make these new changes or try something new or be uncomfortable.
Yeah, like somebody who is a regular 6:30 p.m. class member, and then all of a sudden switches up their day and is up at 5 a.m. to come to the 6 a.m. class. Like they may not on a normal basis get up until 7 or 8 a.m. and now they're getting up at 5 a.m. That's a big routine switch up, right? Because it affects all parts of your day. And like same thing, it's just you got to give it a chance. And then even too, when you look back and you're tired as heck and you're sitting at 3 o'clock in the middle of your work day thinking, man, this sucks. Why am I getting up so early that it makes me feel like this at 3 o'clock? Side note, that's a different nutrition conversation, but but you can look back and be like, you know what, there's some really great people at 6 a.m. or it's not as hot at 6 a.m. or you know, the list of good things are there, and that's got to be the thing that keeps on pushing you through when you get to those stumbling points that present themselves. Nothing you do is ever easy the first try. Like when you're trying something new, nothing is ever easy. Some things are less challenging than others, but like it's never easy, right? Like, and you just need to be accepting of that. And like, that's how and like, it's when I was competing and my sports psych would purposely put me in situations where I had to disrupt my routine. You know, I would work out without music in the dark because that was something that could happen, a power outage. Well, they don't just stop the competition. Like you got to keep on going. What if the DJ stuff went through and you had no music and had to compete? Like, I ran a 5K without my watch. I've talked about that before on our podcast. Like,
I remember one time you had to listen to music you didn't like.
And
I remember that one.
Like there's all like that. I love doing stuff like that because the opportunity for growth when you're uncomfortable and your routine is not there is just so phenomenal. And you can get so much from that journey, like from that lesson, right? Yeah, I don't want to listen to, I don't even know what I picked, but mine would be like,
it was 80s something.
Yeah, it was like rock, like Metallica shit or whatever of the 80s, but it was like awful. And you know what? You just learn in that moment, like, hey, I have the ability to not actually listen to the music, be more tuned into my body and what's it's doing. And as a result, like, look at these skills that I gained that I would not have gained because I'm comfortable listening to Britney Spears or whatever it might be, you know? So, and I mean, that can be applied in any scenario. Yeah, you're a regular 6:30 p.m.er. Get up at 5 a.m. every once in a while. You might find that the morning is the best part of the day for you. You just never gave yourself a chance because you weren't getting up until 8 a.m. So I love that stuff, man. We've talked a lot about that. I feel like.
Yeah, it was just so interesting that it was like a trend in the last.
Everybody's saying about excuses.
Yeah. And
I like that. That's good. And that's the culture in here, right? It's like none of that stuff matters. We've got these goals and we want progress, and these 3 hours that you're spending in the gym are important, but they're not as important as what happens in the other 165 hours of your week. So it's good that they can recognize that and be able to talk like that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And then hopefully start to make the steps to break down those barriers and ditch the excuses.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a constant effort in your entire life, always. That will always be a thing. Excuses will always be a thing. Like it just forever, you know? So it's not actually your ability to not create excuses anymore. It's like your ability to handle them, right? Like, hey, okay, I understand what I'm doing. So let's rebuild a plan and execute it a little bit differently this time.
So aside from like having somebody like reaching out for help and creating that support system, what else can somebody do as they progress to breaking down the barriers and getting past their excuses.
This one sounds like such a cliche one, but writing about it.
Yep.
Like journaling about it. Like, here are the things that happened in my day that I'm not satisfied with. Like, I made these shitty nutritional choices. Cool. Can you examine what that situation looked like? Mm-hmm. Like, how did you feel? Well, I was a little bit more tired this day, or, the more that you can be aware of what was going on, mm-hmm. the better. And awareness is generally, you being able to sit down with yourself mm-hmm. and go back through that scenario. Like, it's stuff that's already happened. So there's no sense being mad or worked up or whatever about it. Like, you can't change the past, but you can look back and examine what happened from an objective perspective and now build a plan to move forward with that. Okay, well, I know that when I'm tired, I'm more likely to make some shitty food choices. So I can look at this a couple of different ways. Like, I can work on incorporating more sleep. I can incorporate more water. I can work on my stress level. Like, there's a lot of different things that can go into that, just depending what avenue you want to take. But at least you've taken the time to sit down and look at, this is the way things are, and it's not working for me. So I need to acknowledge that I need a new approach. Mm-hmm. What would you say?
I don't know, but I like that writing things down one. I should probably pull the journal out.
Like writing, and I mean, writing about it is good too, but I think it needs to come from an outside perspective instead of like an inside perspective. Because I feel like if you're inside about it, you're just caught up in the same sort of mentality that made you make or like that you were in when you made those decisions. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you can be a bystander to those events, then perhaps, like for somebody coming to the gym, like they're super stressed out, have a busy day, kids are wild. Like,
what do you know about wild kids?
I'm like, I don't really have any context of what that type of life might look like, but
you're running here, there, everywhere.
Yeah, it's just, so being able to stand on as a bystander on the sidewalk and watch that life play out, what would you tell that person? Like, mm-hmm. Hey, slow down a little bit. You've got all these other appointments and play dates and things like that. 9 a.m. is a great opportunity for you to drop the kids off at so-and-so's house for a play date, and you're going to come to the gym and hit this workout mm-hmm. twice a week. So there's 2 times a week, which is better than no times a week.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because in a conversation I had with the person who was talking about excuses, I did ask them that question. What would you tell a person who was in the same situation as you?
Do you find that when you ask those questions that the people give the right answers?
In that particular instance, they did.
Yeah. So it's just like, what would you say to somebody in the same situation? And generally they give the right answer.
But you just, and I think that's what I said to her. I was like, see, we have all the answers. We just don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think needs to push somebody over that edge to make them make that change? You're on the hot seat.
I know. I don't want this.
You don't like being on the hot seat.
This is not my position. I don't know.
I think commonly the answer would be like somebody saying when they finally realize they've had enough.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's such a vague response.
Well, okay, that was going to be my response, but I didn't feel like it was good enough because I think that's like, well, what does that look like? Because what is your tolerance for enough? Like, I can go months and months and months on the same excuse and feel like I've had enough, but yet somehow change doesn't happen, right?
Exactly. So it kind of goes on like that. I wish, right?
Yeah.
That's why that quote I read yesterday, and it's in a book I'm reading, just absolutely resonated with me because I'm guilty of saying that too. And when you look at it from the outside perspective, it's like, that's exactly what that means is I want these things, but I'm not willing to change.
That was a tough one.
There you go.
Like my gears are turning.
I like this stuff.
I know you do. I'm glad I could bring this topic to you today.
Needed a soapbox, I guess.
Apparently. Anything else about excuses?
I was trying to think of some of the conversation I had revolving around it. The ones that stump me as a coach is like, they give you the excuse, you give them the solution, they agree with the solution, but yet they still stick with the excuse.
Yeah.
That one, as a coach, I haven't been able to bridge that gap. So for me, when I look back on those situations, it's like, I don't feel that the excuse you're giving me is entirely true if you're still sticking with it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, you're telling me one thing, and here I am telling you why that is a terrible excuse, and you agree with me, but yet we're still stuck at the beginning. We haven't found this solution. So
yeah.
Which is good, because like, I don't have all the answers. And I can admit that.
So many thoughts.
Left you speechless.
You did. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a common topic, because again, like, that's just us as a human being, you know, things come up and our automatic response is, I'm going the easy way.
Like, and things that I'm like are going through my head right now is like, how do we change that? Like, in terms of like like society as a whole, like
that, I don't think that'll happen. I think that's the way that our society has been driven now.
I know, but if we got here.
But look at the things. Ooh, this is an interesting conversation. Look at the things that got us here, though. It was the availability of information, of material things being basically immediate, given to us, you know, or available to us. You can order something off Amazon in the States, at least, and get it the same day.
Yeah.
You know, we rely on that instant gratification. And so when these challenges present themselves and all of a sudden things are difficult, that ease of availability is no longer immediate. And so if that solution doesn't provide that immediate response, then it's right back to square zero, you know? So I think just that's not something that as a society will change, but how you operate as an individual can change, you know? And that comes in many different areas of many different parts of your life, in many different forms too. It's not just limited to like, oh, I conquered it once, I'm done forever, I'm good, like I can handle any excuse that comes my way. Like, hell no, that takes practice, discipline for a very long time. And I think just like willing to admit it is like first step. Like, like understanding that like you are the one that are saying these things and that they are excuses, you know, versus somebody saying them and like totally unaware that this is excuse fitting. You know, I think there's people that aren't willing to accept that responsibility, and those people will for sure never change. Right? They're the people that are always stuck in a continuous loop of, I want this, but how come I can never, like, I'm like, I want to lose 20 pounds, but I'm still the same weight. Like, you know?
Well, and I think that kind of brings up the line that we use back and forth. Like, you can't help somebody who doesn't want to be helped. Like, if you're going to spit out excuses, you clearly don't want help. So like getting you past those barriers and towards goals that you say you have is impossible. And it's hard to help those people. And I think that's frustrating as a coach.
I have patience for that. I do, which is surprising because I don't have a lot of patience for a lot of things, but I do have patience for that because, again, this is such an intricate process. And I don't think that, or not that I don't think, but I know that people don't always get there as quickly as we want them to.
Yes, for sure.
And a large part of that is self-realization. And that takes a little bit longer for others than it does for others, right? Like, so I think that's why I have a lot of patience for it. Is like, I understand where you are right now. Like, I get it. I'm over here. I once was where you were. I know what happens in the middle part. You don't right now. That's okay. I can get you there. I just need you to work with me. But it's like, it's the ones that don't want to work with me. They're telling themselves some other narrative. You know, when I'm sitting here in an NSI and I'm laying it out for you, and you're just here for the conversation, right? You're not here because you actually want to make a change. So that's where I get frustrated. But I mean, that's fine. You have to be ready, willing, and able. You need all three of those things to line up. And not everybody has that all at one time. This was a good one. Cool. Excuses. Love them. Bring him to me. I can debunk any excuse, I promise.
I feel like you're just like standing there with the machete, like, just ready to axe
come at
him
me.
down.
Come at me.
Yep. Oh, man,
now nobody will come to me.
No, nobody's gonna come to you. No, nobody.
And I wonder why people are scared. I'm just kidding. I'm really soft and understanding. I'm working on my empathy. Come on. I'll help you work through this. All right.
Oh, man. We should make that a podcast someday.
What?
How you're evolving and working on empathy.
No, that's a secret. I don't need the world to know that. All they've got is these few little lines. They'll ruin my tough guy image.
So you're just going to keep spitting out, I'm working on my empathy, and hopefully they'll just come around and see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody did tell me I was getting softer, so I guess it's paying off.
And that's when you spit out your line, I'm working on my empathy, not my sympathy. Should make you a t-shirt.
I'm working on my empathy, but I do not have sympathy. I will not have sympathy. That's what it was. Okay, on that note.
I can't even.
Episode 51. Talking about excuses. There will always be excuses. So can you think of, this is our listener challenge that we always throw out. Can you think of maybe a time where you had a Rolodex of excuses about one particular situation that might have arisen? And what did you do about it? Did you succumb to those excuses? Did you reach out to someone? Like, how did your plan play out, whether it was good or bad? If you want to hear that, share that with us. You can follow our socials, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and send us an email if you have any questions or you want to share your story. You know how to reach us. Thanks for listening. Episode 51.